Is cardio killing your gains and stalling fat loss? Could partial reps be the key to packing on more muscle? In this Q&A episode, we answer listener voice messages about optimizing fat loss without sacrificing your hard-earned muscle, the ideal cardio strategy for your goals, the truth about partial reps, and proven tactics to break through plateaus while sculpting your dream physique. Welcome to the Wits and Weights podcast. I'm your host, Philip Pape, and this twice-a-week podcast is dedicated to helping you achieve physical self-mastery by getting stronger, optimizing your nutrition, and upgrading your body composition. We'll uncover science-backed strategies for movement, metabolism, muscle, and mindset with a skeptical eye on the fitness industry so you can look and feel your absolute best. Let's dive right in. Wits and Weights community, welcome to another solo episode of the Wits and Weights podcast. In our last episode 173, Why Mindset Alone Won't Solve Your Food and Hormone Struggles with Tanya Shaw, we explore the limitations of the mind over matter mentality and how combining mindset with an understanding of body science is key to not just achieving, but loving your health results. You even learned how thoughts and emotions affected our body's functions, especially hormones, and some simple techniques to help you actually shift your mindset to better support your health goals. Today for episode 174, we have a Q&A. The title is Partial Reps for More Muscle, Too Much Cardio for Fat Loss, Lose Weight Not Muscle. And we've got a couple great questions submitted to our Fanlist voice message inbox from Jonathan and Matt about optimizing your training and nutrition for fat loss and muscle growth. You'll discover whether partial reps can be an effective tool for building more muscle mass and how to incorporate them intelligently into your training. We'll also dive into the ideal amount and type of cardio for maximizing fat loss without sacrificing your hard-earned gains. Plus, you'll learn proven strategies for breaking through weight loss plateaus while preserving lean muscle tissue. Now, if you'd like me to answer a question on a future episode and give you a shout out, you can either leave a voice message on our Fanlist inbox or send a text message. Both links are in the show notes. Again, you can just leave a voice message. It's through Fanlist. The link is in the show notes, or send a text message straight to the show. That's a one-way text message with your privacy protected. And we are now going to jump right into the Q&A, and I'm going to play for you the audio of the two questions. So our first question comes from Jonathan in Las Vegas. Let's take a listen.
Hi, my name is Jonathan, and I'm calling from Las Vegas. I just found your show within the last week. Lots of great tips so far. Anyway, I started losing weight back in January as a New Year's resolution because I'm going to be 40 in August. I'm 5'8". I started off at 260 pounds, and now in May, I'm down to 220. I lift weights about 4 to 5 times a week. I try jogging about 3 or 4 times a week, and I'm counting my calories. Been working great so far, but now I'm hitting a plateau. If I increase the running, I just don't have enough time, and then I'm too tired to lift on those days. I don't know if I should ditch the cardio altogether because I heard that it could be done without it. I really don't know, but I just need to figure out how to make the most of my time. And I also heard if I'm losing too fast, I could lose muscle, which I don't want. So I just need a way to maybe try to lose 20 more pounds by August. Or I don't know what would be realistic. Anyways, any advice would be greatly appreciated. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, first of all, Jonathan, massive congratulations on that progress so far, doing this on your own. You're asking all the right questions and providing me just the right amount of context to understand what some of the things that could be going on, to give you at least some, principle-based guidance here that I think anyone listening can benefit from. But you started in January as a New Year's resolution. Here's an example where you use the resolution to commit and you stayed committed and you did the right things over time and were consistent to get to this point, which is awesome, right? Because people criticize New Year's resolutions all the time. And it's usually simply because people try to do too much all at once and then they fail. And then we blame the resolutions. In your case, you used it as a driver, as a motivator, and then you started to take action. And you're doing a bunch of the right things. And there's some other things that could probably be tweaked here and there. And remember that as you go through a long process like this with a decent amount of fat to lose, you can't always apply the exact same strategies throughout the entire process. You can definitely the same principles, but the strategies will have to change based on your biofeedback and your results and your adaptation and all of that. So we're going to drill down into each of these things that hopefully I remember them all from the question. But again, 40 pounds in about 4 to 5 months, that is about 2 pounds a week. If I have that right, that's like maybe not quite 1% of your body weight a week, but we always talk about 1% per week being the limit above which you tend to start losing muscle mass. Now, for bigger guys like you have a little more flexibility and fat to work with. You have some fat storage that actually helps you, right? And we can reframe that as a positive thing because it's extra calories that your body can draw on because you're not very lean to begin with. And so it gives you the ability to go more aggressive at the beginning and still potentially even build some muscle while you're losing fat. So, that's awesome, right? It's a testament to the consistency and hard work with everything you're doing. And I know it probably hasn't been easy either, but you're doing awesome and you're almost where you want to be, at least for this first phase. Now, you talked about hitting a weight plateau, which plateau is a kind of a dirty word sometimes, right? We use it to mean like things aren't moving anymore. And so now I need to crank up the movement or I need to crank down the calories to push to the plateau. When in reality, oftentimes, even if you feel like you're doing all the right things, there's a piece of that we don't fully understand until we have all the data. And it might be that you're building muscle and losing fat at the same time. It might be that you're getting more stressed or less sleep. And it might simply be because as you've lost all this weight, this 40 pounds, you've experienced metabolic adaptation. You've experienced it in a few ways. First is the traditional reason because your hormones are responding to the lack of energy and downregulating everything, making you more efficient, right? And so you burn fewer calories, but you've also lost a ton of weight. And so you simply are moving around less mass, and that requires fewer calories. So I suspect that your expenditure has dropped that whole time. You say that you're calorie tracking, but you didn't mention whether you're tracking your metabolic rate or your expenditure because, whatever intake you started with, right? Let's say you calculated that you burn at the beginning 3,500 calories and you wanted to go into 1,000 calorie deficit to lose 2 pounds a week, 1,000 calories a day to lose 2 pounds a week. And so you said, I'm going to eat 2,500 calories. Well, as your body adapts and that 3,500 expenditure drops, if you keep eating 2,500 calories, the weight loss rate will slow down, right? The deficit will get smaller. So you have to keep that intake up with your deficit. Now, you've had decent progress, which tells me that you have been keeping up with that, or your metabolism hasn't dropped that much. And I've seen this with clients who are on the bigger size where, especially male clients who are detrained or who really lift heavy, consistently, they train well. And sometimes I'll find that once they're training well and walking and doing all those things and eating a bunch of protein, their metabolism might actually level off and increase, right? Which is crazy to think about, but it happens. So unless I have that history of yours, I don't know. And one, you've probably heard me talk about MacroFactor on the show. I don't know if you're already using it, but if you're not, go right now and download MacroFactor, enter my code WITS and WEIGHTS, all one word, get the free 2-week trial from that, start using it, backdate or retroactively enter your last like 20 or 30 days of calories per day that you ate and your scale weight so that it can update its algorithm more quickly. And then you'll know what is my expenditure so that I can break through that quote unquote plateau going forward. So once you've got that set up, now we have some numbers to work with and some accuracy we can target. Now you said you're 5'8", you're 220 pounds. All right. So I'm 5'9" and I'm 180. And some people call me, a skinny guy that needs to gain weight, but just put it in perspective, like the dudes that I work with, people who lift, muscle mass, body composition, you're probably not that far from a really good body composition and leanness than you think. Even, you said you have a lot of room to lose, or you want to lose 20 more pounds. Maybe, right? We don't know for sure that 200 is the magic number. You could get down to 205, 210 and realize, hey, this is actually a great place to be. And I don't want to continue like really trying to push it because of what it takes. Or you could be like, nah, I want to get down to, 190. And that's my goal because I want to get to a certain level of leanness or a certain look. And then you'll go into muscle building phase. So that is up to you and your goals, Jonathan. I would say on average, somebody who's 225.8, yeah, they're probably a little bit higher in the body fat percentage, territory. And getting down to say 200 or 190 will put them closer to that 15% ish, 15 to 20%. You're probably decent amount above 20%. But as you get leaner, we have to take a little bit more moderate approach because you don't have that excess fat. We don't want to stall out. We don't want to just be too low with the energy and the carbs for your lifting sessions and all of that stuff, right? It gets a little bit more tricky and we have to be a little more conservative. So first, I would make sure that your nutrition is dialed in. You didn't give me any details on that, but you did say you're counting calories. So again, get macro factor. So you're not only seeing your calories, but you get evidence-based targets for your macro goals based on your target weight goal. So let's say your target weight is 190 or 200. I think you said it's 200. All right. You want to be eating about 200 grams of protein, another 30% or so calories from fat, and the rest from carbs. If your macros are anywhere off of that, it could affect your performance. It could affect your muscle mass loss or preservation and things like that, your energy and so on. So for a guy like you, I'm thinking around 200 grams of protein per day, about 30% from fat, and that's going to depend on how many calories you're eating, and then the rest from carbs. For the rate of loss, you've been hitting about 0.8, 0.9% of your body weight. You could conceivably go up to that same rate for the remaining 20 pounds. So at 220, that's, let's say on the upper end, 2 pounds a week, 1,000 calorie deficit a day, and that would get you the 20 pounds in 10 weeks. So I would say in terms of realistic, yeah, totally realistic. And because you're still bigger, still have a little weight to lose, I think the flexibility is there as long as you are not feeling like it's depriving you so much that you're starting to get food obsessed, for example. If you want a more moderate approach and you're happy with like 10 to 15 pounds, I would say that is more reasonable and super sustainable, right? And that would put you at like 500 to 750 calorie deficit a day. In terms of cardio, all right, you mentioned you jog like 3 or 4 times a week. I don't know how much walking or steps you get besides that. I definitely wouldn't ditch it completely if it's a routine for you. I think it's great, for heart health. It can be helpful with recovery. It can assist a little bit with fat loss. But if you feel like it's burning you out, it's impairing your performance, you don't have enough time, it's just too much, you can definitely reduce it. And I don't think it's going to make a huge difference as long as your overall movement and activity is not dropping that much, like in terms of your step count. So if you go from 20,000 steps a day down to 8,000 steps a day, that could make a difference. But if you go from 15 to 12, it may not make a big difference. And in fact, you might notice it actually reduces some of the stress on your body and helps you continue that fat loss and feel a little better. Keep in mind also, if you lower the rate of loss to be a little more conservative, you wouldn't need that extra activity necessarily because you're kind of making up for it in the food department. You're eating more food, or I shouldn't say you're eating more food. You might be eating the same amount of food, but you don't need to burn as much energy because the deficit is smaller, if that makes sense. And then I would say your priority should be your strength training, right? That's the key to maintaining your muscle while you lean down, focusing on those heavy lifts, the compound lifts, pushing for progressive overload. I don't know what your split looks like. I'm assuming it's solid, but I would, if I were your coach, I would take a look at that and make sure the lifting sessions themselves aren't too long and too much during the week. You might think it's sacrilegious for me to say this, but if you're doing too much in the lifting department for volume, that might have to come down to allow you to recover while the cardio and the walking stays the same. You never know. It depends on how you feel. And this is where tracking your biofeedback, your hunger, your digestion, your sleep, your energy, your recovery, your mood, and then tying that to the changes that you make is going to be very helpful. Now, aside from lifting and formal cardio, we talk about NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is all the walking, the fidgeting, the cleaning, doing chores. And that's where, again, I'd look for what is your step count right now. That plus cardio, if the total stays in that 10 to 14K range, that's really, really solid. Okay, really solid. Even if it is just from walking instead of from jogging, for example, because the jogging really could be hindering a little bit of the recovery. Maybe you might be adapted to it. And if you have good form, it may not be that much of an issue. All right. So to recap, I know I threw a lot at you. Tighten up nutrition, make sure you're tracking with macro factor, make sure the protein is up there, go for as aggressive a calorie deficit that's sustainable for you, but not too aggressive. Reallocate some of the energy from cardio if needed, so you can crush it in the weight room and get those, not just the gains, but the preserving your muscle. Look at your NEAT in terms of your step count and get it into that 10, 12K range, and then go at the right rate of loss and adjust your calories and macros each week. If you're using macro factor, that's automatic. where you shouldn't be hitting plateaus at that point. Now, as of the time of this episode, 20 pounds by August is about 10 weeks away. So that's 2 pounds a week. And that's, I'll say, aggressive, but within the range of realistic. And again, may not be ideal if you're feeling a bit run down. So you got to think about those. And by the way, you can follow up with me directly. You can either send a text or reach out to me on Instagram at Wits and Weights. Jonathan, if you want to follow up with some more details, let me know you heard this and what you're doing. We could even give an update to the community. I think that's all I wanted to cover for that. Oh yeah, the other thing is if you get down to like 205, 210, even if you don't get all the way to the 200 and it's August, September timeframe, you're probably in a great position then to go to maintenance for a while, if not into a very lean muscle building phase all through the fall and winter months. The perfect time to be eating more food, right? You can jack up the calories back up by the 750 or 1,000 calories you were missing out on, right? It might be at a lower rate than you started because you're so much lighter, but it'll still be a lot more calories, help your metabolism recover, and just feel great in the gym and everywhere else for a while, and take this nice long diet break is effectively what it is. It's a diet break. A guy like you who's trying to lose like 60 pounds, normally I would recommend breaks and refeeds be built in anyway. So that's the only other piece I didn't mention is, I know you want to get to this number by August, but one other approach is you can just go at a slow roll, fit in some diet breaks at maintenance for like a week or two and really extend it out, but not ever feel like you're really dieting that hard. That's the other approach. If you missed my episode, How Fast Should I Lose Weight for Fat Loss that came out recently, check that one out because I described the different scenarios for you and it might give you some more ideas, as will anyone else listening. So consistency, man, trusting that process, showing up like you're doing, you're going to get the results. I'm very excited for you. This is what it's all about. Enjoying that journey, keep up and keep that momentum up and you'll come out the other side, a leaner, meaner version of yourself. Hey, this is Philip, and I hope you're enjoying this episode of Wits and Weights. I started Wits and Weights to help ambitious individuals in their 30s, 40s, and beyond who want to build muscle, lose fat, and finally look like they lift. I've noticed that when people transform their physique, they not only look and feel better, but they also experience incredible changes in their health, confidence, and overall quality of life. If you're listening to this podcast, I assume you want the same thing, to build your ultimate physique and unlock your full potential, whether you're just starting out or looking to take your progress to the next level. That's why I created Wits and Weights Physique University, a semi-private group coaching experience designed to help you achieve your best physique ever. With a personalized, done-for-you nutrition plan, custom-designed courses, new workout programs each month, live coaching calls, and a supportive community, you'll have access to everything you need to succeed. If you're ready to shatter your plateaus and transform your body and life, head over to witsandweights.com/physique or click the link in the show notes to enroll today. Again, that's witsandweights.com/physique. I can't wait to welcome you to the community and help you become the strongest, leanest, and healthiest version of yourself. Now back to the show. All right, so that was the first question. Second question comes from Matt. He asks about partial reps and whether they're actually useful for building muscle. And I'm going to play his audio in a second, but I will say this is a super common question these days, both partial and long length partials. And there's a lot of debate around it in the fitness industry. So let's just take a listen to Matt's audio and then we'll break it down.
My question is about partial reps. I've heard a lot of conflicting things about partials. Some people say they're great for muscle growth, stimulate muscle growth. Some people say they're not. What's your opinion on partials? Should I avoid them? Don't waste time? Or are they beneficial after all? Thanks. Podcast is awesome. My name is Matt Roberts. Thanks, buddy.
All right. So I wanted to play his audio for two reasons. One, the accent from across the pond. We love that here. And the other is, the shout out about how awesome the podcast is, which can never stroke my ego enough. But in all seriousness, Matt, very good question. I don't know that I've covered partial reps in any great detail on the show, other than some discussions with, I think, Brian Borstein. So go back and find his interview. And I think he's the only guy I've ever talked about it with. Not even Andy Baker. I'm not sure we even got into partial reps. But anyway, again, appreciate the kind words and the great question. It's a polarizing topic. Some people swear by them. I know trainers who are like, yeah, all I do is partials these days, like long length partials, and it's working great for me. Other people say, no, they're useless. As with most things, the truth is in the middle. So let's define first what we mean by partial reps. So just in case people are like, what the heck are you talking about? A partial rep is what it sounds like. It's a repetition that uses a shorter range of motion than a full rep. Now, I'm going to trigger some people here because squats, the right way to squat when you do a normal full range squat is below parallel. And there are a lot of people that don't squat to depth. They will squat an inch above parallel or even much higher than that. And to me, that is a partial squat, even if you think you're going all the way down. So that's one thing I want to get out of the way. I know that's what you're not asking about, Matt. I'm sure you're like super dialed in with all your form and you know exactly how to execute partial versus full reps. But just in case, I'm putting it out there that like a half or a quarter squat, that is a partial rep where you don't go all the way into full depth. Another example would be bench press lockouts where you're not coming down all the way to your chest. And by the way, partial reps can go both directions. So like if you had some pins set up and you set up the bar for a bench press really low, close to your chest on pins, and then you did pin presses, those are partials as well, right? Because you're starting at the bottom and you're not going all the way down to the chest. So there's different ways to look at it. You can look at it from both sides of the range of motion. The top half of a bicep curl, but also the bottom half of the bicep curl, right? That's the lengthened partial. So that's what a partial rep is. And the argument for them is they allow you to handle heavier loads. That's one argument. Like, oh, well, I'm shortening the range of motion so I can go heavier, right? And I can target weak points in a lift. For example, if you think of a rack pull, that's like a partial deadlift. That's what it is. It's a partial range of motion deadlift. And you can go a lot heavier on a rack pull than you could on a deadlift and target just part of the musculature, which has some validity as an accessory, as a support, as a variant, right? Another argument is that they maintain constant tension on the muscle. Now, this is the idea that if you're simply kind of speeding up the movement and sticking within a small range, like imagine bicep curls from the top and you bring them down just a few inches, you come up and down, and you're constantly maintaining that tension. Another good example, you ever done lying tricep extensions? And one way I like to do them is I at the top, I don't lock out vertically. I actually lock out with some load hanging out, right? The moment arm hanging behind me a bit and keeping tension on there. That's kind of a bodybuilding thing. And so partial reps allow you to do that in different creative ways as well. It's same thing with like the lengthened partials, right? If you think of lengthened partial squats, you're going all the way down to the bottom, you're pushing up, but you're not getting past that lockout point, and then you're going back down again. That can create a lot of tension during that time. You're never really relaxing. You're never getting that load off of you at the lockout. It also can help you get in some extra volume after you get to failure with full reps. So again, lengthened partials, for example, if you've exhausted the muscle with the full range, now you can do some more at a lengthened range. And some people see that as a nice way to get in some more volume where otherwise you would be completely fatigued. And again, there is some validity there as well. All of these things could theoretically lead to more muscle growth if they're done in an intelligent way to supplement, in my opinion, mostly full ROM movements, but there's definitely a place for them. Now, the drawback is that they don't train the full range of motion, right? And full ROM is generally considered superior for overall muscle development, for your movement patterns, for your strength gains, and then even functionality. And again, I hate to use the word functional, but when we talk about squats, doing the full squat, engaging all the musculature as the human body was designed, right? Same thing with pressing, same thing with pulling. Getting the full ROM movements in there at a minimum, I think is essential for people. That doesn't mean you can't do variations. So for example, you don't have to deadlift. You could do, say, Romanian deadlifts, right? You might have some limitations. You might have some fatigue that causes you to avoid certain movements, whatever. But I'm talking about full ROM versus partial. So full ROM ensures that you're strengthening the muscle through the complete contraction and the stretch, not just one portion of it. And we know that is associated with positive hypertrophy outcomes, right? Muscle development outcomes, as well as strength. If you have a training plan, I would say, increasing your weight, your volume, your reps, whatever, progressive overload, right? We call it, through full ROM lifts. That should be the foundation. I think I even put a quick wits out recently called compound lifts as the foundation of your training or whatever. And I'm talking about full ROM lifts. But I do think partials can serve as a useful tool. So for example, some exercises would be done with a modified ROM for safety or to target the prime movers more effectively. I mentioned rack pulls, right? block deadlifts or what do you call them? Like not stiff leg deadlifts, but I'm losing my mind here. But instead of full deadlifts, you have the bar raised. So it's either raised on some blocks or pads or up on pins, right? It's raised above where it's higher than the ground instead of full deadlifts. So effectively, that's what a rack pull is, but a rack pull is a much higher version of that. With a rack pull, you could be right below the knee or maybe right above the knee in that range. Board presses or floor presses, and in fact, board presses, or the one where you can get a little a device that goes on the bar that prevents the bar from coming all the way down. That could be really good if you have wonky shoulders. Like I've noticed doing both paused bench presses and pin presses where my shoulder doesn't fully extend, so I'm not getting the full range, is helpful. But remember, it depends on what you're trying to train. If you're not trying to train the shoulders with your bench press and you're really focused on the pecs, then you could do these partials. You could even just do inclines for that matter, right? And do different movements altogether, and then do shoulder-specific movements for your shoulder. So you could definitely get creative. And in this case, the partial ROM is intentional. It's not like I'm getting lazy, like, hey, you partial squatters out there, that you need to go to full depth. And I don't mean to call you lazy. You may not be aware. This is where form checks and having a coach and being in a community and all that can help. Wits and Weights Physique University, come join us. It could also be the result of ego lifting. Guys out there, ego lifting, where you start to do cheater reps, partial reps, the whole deal. I see this a lot with isolation movements, especially. However, I also see them with things like the overhead press, okay? The overhead press, you've got to get your head out of the way. You've got to have that vertical bar path. And then at the top, you've got to have that full shrug at the top. If you're not doing a full shrug, we're talking push that button. Don't just tap it. Push that button up into the ceiling, then it's a partial ROM. It's not a full ROM press. So some of you may be thinking you're doing full ROM movements and you're getting partials, and you're hearing this episode like, ooh, I've got some opportunity there. I don't know if that's you, Matt, but I wanted to pull that out because this answer I'm giving you is going to be much more comprehensive than maybe you thought. And that's what we do here on Wits and Weights. All right. Partials can also be strategically used to blast through sticking points. So let's say you're struggling with your bench press lockout. That's where you could throw in some heavy partial reps in the top half of the movement using accommodating resistance, right? Chains, bands, a slingshot. A lot of guys in my lifting community know what I'm talking about. That's a way to assist part of the movement. And so you're effectively making it a partial ROM because you're not fully loading the entire ROM. And in fact, bands in general in different movements can help with that. Like if you want to do deadlifts with a band, for example, you're adding more load to part of the ROM. And so that's a form of a partial, if you allow me that definition. Let's see. Another scenario where I think partials can be helpful is if you want to accumulate extra, what we call metabolic stress at the end of a set, right? Extra fatigue. So let's say you hit failure on, I don't know, dumbbell lateral raises, right? At 12 reps. You can't get up and, you can't bring your arm all the way up. Well, you do partial reps and you can still get that burn and that stimulus, that pump in the shoulder by getting those extra partials. They're kind of like cheater reps, but you've already done the work you intended. Now you're just like torching those medial delts and getting this extra constant tension. Think of the extreme of this being one single rep where you're just holding it there and it starts to burn, right? You get what I'm saying. And the idea here is you still have to go pretty heavy at that point because you're doing a partial. So as a general guideline, Matt, I'd say partial reps can be a tool in the toolbox, but not the main course or the main tool, right? And I'm going to recap everything I just said because I went on a whole bunch of what I thought were very exciting tangents that I hope you found interesting, but I'm going to recap for you. Number one, stick to full ROM for the majority of your training. We're talking probably 80-90% of your training, especially the main compound lifts. Use partial sparingly on isolation and accessory movements like lat raises, tricep pushdowns, leg extensions, curls, etc. Number three, sprinkle them in toward the end of a workout if you want it as an intensity technique or if you want to eke out some extra volume on a lagging body part. Number four, make sure you're controlling the eccentric, that you're pausing in the contracted position and you're keeping that constant tension. Okay, even when you're doing partial, you want to make it a deliberate, objectively measurable range of motion so that you can actually progress that ROM. Number 5, don't ego lift. Don't sacrifice form just to lift more weights with partials. And number 6, track your partial rep sets and aim to progress over time like you would with full ROM. Just what I mentioned. Make it objective. All right, Matt, hopefully that helps provide what I think is a pretty comprehensive and balanced take on partial reps. If you use them intelligently, you use them, in moderation, I'll say, I think they can be a valuable addition to both physique and strength focused programs. I think they can help, but they're like the icing on the cake, right? They're the gravy, as they say. So when in doubt, prioritize full ROM, progressive overload, and that's really going to move the needle long term. You don't have to do partials, but they can be a lot of fun. Okay, so that was 2 questions answered in great detail. We covered a lot of ground: plateaus, fat loss, muscle retention, cardio, NEAT, partials. Remember that this is principles that we talk about here. There's no one size fits all. The reason my answers tend to be on the longer side rather than just rapid fire is because there are a lot of if-thens. There are a lot of things to think about for what works best for you, your lifestyle. There's trial and error. There's experimentation that you need to do, and then be consistent for a while with the thing you're testing out to get the result or not. And that feedback feeds back to the next experiment. So, for Jonathan, right, my advice is more or less stay the course and trust the process, but start to dial in some things, dial in his tracking, use macro factor, balance out his activity for recovery and all of that. And he's trending in the right direction. So he's winning. He's winning, right? That's an inspiration to all of us. And then for Matt and anyone else wondering about partial reps, use them widely. They can help you smash through sticking points, get a killer pump, and they shouldn't comprise a bulk of your training, right? You're not going to go wrong prioritizing heavy compound lifts with good form and sprinkling in the partials, as a sort of cherry on top. So if you've got a question you want me to answer on a future episode like this, you can either leave a voice message on our Fanlist inbox or send a text message. Both of those links are in the show notes. And Wits and Weights Physique University continues to be open for enrollment as well. If you're looking for personalized guidance for some of these types of questions where we can dig in with your actual numbers, your plan, your life, and figure out how it works, I'm always going to mention that here, that the link is available in the show notes if you want to check it out. And if you're not sure, you can always reach out to me. Instagram @WitsandWeights. Send a text message, email me, whatever, all the ways. All right. In our next episode, 175, the Big is Beautiful movement, obesity, and heart health with Dr. Tiffany DiPietro. We discuss some of the myths surrounding heart disease, like the idea that it's only a man's disease or you must have symptoms to have a problem. Tiffany's going to share her best practices for nutrition and exercise to maintain a healthy heart and effective ways to prevent cardiovascular issues. And then we step into the minefield of the Big is Beautiful movement by asking the question, can big also be healthy? Make sure, please, right now, hit follow in your podcast app to get notified when that episode comes out. And you will be supporting the show by doing that. As always, stay strong, and I'll talk to you next time here on the Wits and Weights podcast. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Wits and Weights. If you found value in today's episode and know someone else who's looking to level up their wits or weights, please take a moment to share this episode with them. And make sure to hit the follow button in your podcast platform right now to catch the next episode. Until then, stay strong. Hey, before you go, I want to let you know about a free resource I have. They are free guides on everything from fat loss to eating out to building muscle to managing hunger to figuring out the best macros for you and more, being added all the time. You want to get the most out of these podcasts and your time to look and feel your best, and these free guides will give you a quick and easy way to know what to do. If you want to get your hands on these completely free guides, you can head over to witsandweights.com/free. That's witsandweights.com/free to get your free guides and level up your results today.